In this video, I'm going to talk about whether you have to break bad news in person or whether you can do it by phone or using some other technology. Hi everybody, this is Bruce Lambert from howcommunicationworks.com. This is a channel where I teach you about communication skills so you can improve your relationships, succeed at work, and be more confident. You may have heard a story in the news recently about a man who was in an intensive care room in the hospital when a machine was wheeled into his room so a doctor could talk to him remotely. The doctor was not there in the room with him, but the doctor was at another hospital speaking to the patient via video conference. So the doctor was on a screen, he had a headset on, and he began to deliver the news to the patient. In this case, the news that he delivered was bad news. It was the news that the patient's illness had progressed to such an extent that there wasn't much more that could be done in terms of saving him, and that he would only be able to be made comfortable at this point. So it was very bad news. They were basically breaking the news to this guy that he was dying. Now, in a sense, I think this family already knew that he was dying. This was a very seriously ill person with very serious lung disease, but still, this is very difficult news to get no matter when you get it. And in this case, it was given via video conference. And the family was very upset. One of the members of the family took a cell phone video of this happening and posted it to Facebook, and there was a whole controversy. And I'll provide some links down below in the description to stories about how this happened if you want to see more details. And there's video of this on YouTube if you want to see the interaction itself.
Step is going to hospice at home, right?
You know, I don't know if he's going to get home.
Okay.
Because I know you have a DNR in place, but you're still, we're still treating you very aggressively.
Can you hear him? Okay.
If you want, I can transition you to make sure you're comfortable. Everything is focused around your comfort. Is that what you want?
He said yes. So do you want some morphine to make you comfortable and relax? No. A little bit. A little bit. Do you want me to call Grandma and Mom and ask and see what they think?
Okay. One of the things is we can continue the treatment, but we can start focusing a little bit more on comfort. We can give you a little bit of morphine or more, but I think you need a little bit more time. But I want you to understand that when we start to do more and more morphine, there is a risk that your breathing might not be enough, right? This mask is not going to be effective at some point, right? Okay, I can order some morphine. But are you okay with us kind of switching to more comfort-focused care?
So when I saw this, first of all, the headlines all said, "Robot delivers bad news. Man gets bad news from robot." Now, this is just sensationalism in the headline. It wasn't actually a robot who gave this person the bad news. The video screen was on wheels, and so it kind of comes in on wheels, and that's the robot. But it was like getting bad news via Skype or getting bad news via FaceTime. It was getting bad news via video conference. So the real question is it inappropriate to give bad news via video conference? Or I guess the more basic question, what form of communication is appropriate and necessary when you're giving bad news? And is it critical to break bad news only in person? So is there something about the nature of bad news which means it can only be broken in person, or it can only be broken effectively in person? I think this is a legitimate question to ask, and I'm not certain I know the right answer, but I suspect the answer is no, it doesn't always need to be given in person. I think it's much more about the way the news is broken rather than the medium in which the news is broken. Now, I do think there are lots of advantages to breaking bad news in person in a healthcare setting. For example, you can touch the patient where touch is appropriate. If a patient doesn't mind being touched, touch can have powerful therapeutic benefits when you're comforting someone and giving them bad news. And I think just that your physical presence has a kind of important nonverbal impact on a patient and their family. And also the idea that you took the time to be physically present with them suggests something about how important this interaction is. But I also know in many parts of the country, the reason we have these video conference machines that doctors can appear on is because in many areas of the country, the specialists that you need are not close to you. And so rather than driving hours away from your home to get to a specialist, specialists can be brought to you via these video technologies, these remote medicine kinds of technologies. So there's a reason that these technologies exist. It's to bring people together across great distances. The question is whether only certain interactions should be allowed over these remote communication technologies. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think that had this message been delivered with maximum empathy and sensitivity, and if you want, I've made a bunch of videos about how to communicate empathically. This topic of communicating bad news empathically is the thing that I talk about most when I'm out doing my consulting, when I'm training people how to talk to patients and families after they've experienced harm in the midst of healthcare. And in all that experience, what I've learned is it isn't really the medium, that is, whether it's video or telephone or face-to-face, though I would recommend face-to-face, and most bad news, I think, is broken face-to-face, but it's the message. I can tell you from firsthand experience that a lot of the time, even when people are face-to-face, they do not communicate bad news effectively. They do not communicate with sufficient empathy. So I think what's really at issue here is empathic communication skills, not whether it was on a video screen or whether it was on the telephone or whether it was via FaceTime. I think it's the way the message is delivered. And I listened to this message, and it wasn't horrible. It wasn't the worst thing I'd ever heard, but there was certainly room for improvement in terms of delivering this message much more empathically, giving a shot across the bow or a warning shot, letting the family know he was about to break bad news, and then listening more effectively and just breaking the bad news more sensitively. And there's all sorts of guidelines on how to break bad news. It's never easy, and I don't want to criticize this doctor too much because it's a difficult task. I think he may have come across as callous because he delivered in a sort of matter-of-fact way. And one of the complaints that the family had was that his manner was too matter-of-fact. And I've seen this many times. What is routine news for doctors is often catastrophic bad news for patients and families. And doctors who take care of very sick patients, they actually have to break this kind of news all the time. It is, in a sense, matter-of-fact news for them. But it's not matter-of-fact news for the family. And so one of the challenges of health professionals is to have to take what is routine to them and communicate in a way that is sensitive to the fact that it's incredibly difficult, once-in-a-lifetime bad news for the family. And I think maybe this physician wasn't able to meet that challenge in this particular interaction. And then the family focused on the technology rather than on the way that the message was conveyed. I think if there was a much more skillful communicator, or if this guy had an opportunity to practice or something, then it wouldn't have mattered that he was on video. He could have delivered this news with great empathy. He could have even apologized for not being able to be there in person, but there were hundreds of miles that separated the doctor and the patient in this case. So this reminds me of the debate about, whether you can break up with someone over a text message. It's a similar set of issues about, are there certain kinds of communication tasks that demand to be done in person because of the intimacy or how consequential this particular communication task is? Is it only legitimate if it's done in person? That is, if you were to propose to someone, would you propose to them over FaceTime or over the telephone or via text message? Probably not. It seems like something really intimate, really significant, really consequential kind of demands to be done in person, because being in person itself says something about our kind of commitment to the importance of the communication task at hand. At least that's true in personal relationships. I'm not sure the same exact rules apply in these kind of remote medicine situations where there's a particular reason why the doctor is communicating with the patient via video screen. Is because the distance that separates doctor and patient is great, and there's a practical, pragmatic reason that the doctor and patient are not in the same room. So I would love to hear what you think. Is it okay to break this kind of bad news via video conference? Is it okay to break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend over text message? What do you think? Go down in the comments and let me know. I'd love to hear it. If you like this kind of video, give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't been here before, and click that notification icon. Go on over to howcommunicationworks.com and give us your email address, and we'll send you an entire ebook about empathic communication skills, which touches on all the things that this doctor might have been able to do to convey this bad news more effectively. I'll also put some more stuff down I'll also put some more links down in the description, and I'll link to some stuff here in the video that talks more about empathic communication skills, especially breaking bad news in a medical context. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.